I'm Casey Bowers, the Assistant Vice President for Government Relations at the Environmental League of Massachusetts. ELM was founded 122 years ago to the day. We are an environmental advocacy organization pushing Massachusetts to lead the nation in responsible environmental policy. We have long been a convener on environmental issues, and we are proud to continue this long tradition today, albeit in a new digital way. I'm thrilled to welcome our over 700 registrants joining us from across the Commonwealth here on Zoom. We are also streaming this on Facebook Live, and we'll post the recording on our YouTube page. This is the 8th edition of ELM's 10-session weekly webinar series, which will run through June 17th. Together, we've explored the intersection of public policy and two crises of COVID-19 and climate change. With all of our speakers, we have also discussed the intersectionality of these issues and race, and that connection is at the forefront now more than ever. We grieve for the suffering and loss that so many are experiencing across our country. As an organization dedicated to protecting our environment and our public health, the ELM team has committed to educating ourselves and our supporters on the historic and current racism across Massachusetts. We commit to understanding cultures and practices that perpetuate systems of racism and to advocate for policies and support those that are willing to address these issues. We are honored to have 3 such leaders representing the people of Mass and hailing from gateway cities here with us today to explore climate policy at the federal, state, and local levels. For the next hour, you can expect about 40 minutes of discussion with questions from the broader ELM team and from those who have submitted questions in advance. The remaining 20 minutes will be live Q&A from you, the audience, so feel free to click below Q&A button to submit a question at any time. Or please upvote the questions that you like. We won't be able to get to every question, but we'll try to cover as many as we can. As I mentioned, this event is being broadcast on Facebook Live, and the recording will be available on ELM's YouTube page, so you can share it widely. But enough from me. Let's get to our great panelists. Congressman McGovern was born and raised in Worcester, first elected in Congress in 1996. He has fought tirelessly for the people of Massachusetts and has earned the respect and trust of his colleagues, including Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who named him chairman of the powerful House Rules Committee. He is a member of the House Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition, is a key champion of the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and has spent over 20 years fighting to protect our open spaces, parks, and recreation areas. Thanks for joining us today. Hailing from Lowell, Rep. Tom Golden has served the 16th Middlesex District since 1995. In 2015, he was appointed as the House Chair of the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. Let's just agree to call it TUE moving forward. During his tenure as chair, he has worked with his colleagues to scale up distributed and grid-scale renewable energy across the Commonwealth, including solar, offshore wind, and energy storage. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, we have Councillor Liang. She's a lifelong resident of Quincy, and in 2015 became its first and only Chinese American city councilor. A child of immigrants, she has experienced firsthand the challenges minority children and families face. She centers equity and accessibility in the way she approaches enhancing climate resiliency and reducing municipal emissions. She chairs Quincy's Ordinance Committee, which passed a municipal plastic bag ban in 2019. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Now let's transition to some of the questions that were submitted in advance. But please don't forget you can submit questions through the function at any time. We'll start with a question that will also serve as an introduction to you, Rep. McGovern. How do energy and environmental issues impact your constituents? And what do you hear from them? And how does this frame your priorities?
Well, thank you for the question, and thank you for all of your great work. And I'm delighted to be on this panel with such distinguished colleagues here. Look, the issue of the environment and energy are of utmost concern to my constituents. As we are dealing with this pandemic right now, we are seeing the great inequities and inequalities in our country. And we're seeing some of those inequalities and inequities in the area of the environment and energy. Our Attorney General Maura Healey did an incredible report on environmental injustice and how people who are living in areas that are packed with power plants and polluters, polluting industries have been more susceptible to this disease. So there's an issue of justice here. And a lot of my constituents are raising that issue, particularly now. I represent a very diverse district, urban, suburban, and rural. I have farmers who talk about the climate crisis on a regular basis. They're seeing the direct impact on their ability to make a living. I remember talking to a farmer who's in his 90s who told me that you people in Washington need to get your act together and address this climate crisis because something is happening here. We're experiencing these, wide, spikes in weather patterns that, one year droughts, another year extreme rains, and we're having a very difficult time trying to make a living. Where we have people who are coming to our country as refugees, as climate refugees from countries that have been severely impacted by the climate crisis, and people can no longer earn a living, can no longer grow food to be able to support their families. But my constituents care deeply about clean air, clean water, protecting open space, environmental justice, and it's an issue that every time I do a town hall, or every time I do a teletown hall, or if I do a virtual town hall, these issues are raised repeatedly. Being good to the environment, my constituents understand, is also being concerned about our economic future as well, because they see great opportunity if we take this issue more seriously and invest in cleaner energy, greener energy, environmental technologies, and if we're good stewards of this planet.
Thank you. I know we hear a lot about the economy, especially now, and making that connection is really important. And speaking of someone who I know hears a lot from constituents, Rep. Golden, how would you answer that question?
Tend to hear from my constituents on a very regular basis through email, phone calls, or even at the local store. It is a good opportunity to be a local rep walking the district. Unfortunately, the congressman, that's very difficult for you folks with so many people that you have, but you folks do this great town hall meetings that I've heard about many, many times. So from this perspective, everybody in my district is very, very well aware of what's happening, and what they want to see is that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as well as the country as a whole, continues to get cleaner day by day. We see opportunity for clean energy jobs to fight, obviously, the climate change that we have going on, because these green energy jobs are creating good paying jobs and assisting the green economy. Being here in the city of Lowell, in the town of Chelmsford, I have a great opportunity to work with UMass Lowell. UMass Lowell is doing a phenomenal job. They're working hand in hand with places like Greentown Labs, which I know so many folks know about, and to push the green economy. UMass Lowell has a real strength in this with their engineering program, and they're really good at trying to bring people together. Just the other day, I was talking with some young folks who are extremely concerned about environmental issues. Ran into the new person that is running MassPerg over at UMass Lowell, and looking forward to meeting with those folks when they get back on campus. But my constituents want to be clean and are very conscientious about the cost. How is this going to cost, the amount of money that it could possibly cost in this transition? But I think the most important piece is that they want to make sure that our economy is our grid is cleaner every single day. So we're always looking for the most feasible and cost-effective way to move forward. I mean, I know that ELM has really pushed 2050, which is now currently sitting in Ways and Means Committee. That's something that is very interesting to myself, and I know that the Speaker of the House is very interested in as well. So once again, I just want to say thank you very much. And I look forward to the remainder of this event.
Great, thanks. And I know Council President Liang, you were talking just about being out in the community last night. How about you tell us a little bit more from your perspective?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, first of all, for organizing this and for having me here. I'm really honored and a little overwhelmed to be in a space with Representative Golden and Congressman McGovern. Thank you both so much for being here as well. I just want to start by taking this moment to acknowledge, what is happening right now, not just with the pandemic, but with all of the anger and frustration that's felt across the Commonwealth and across the nation. And I, would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to give a huge thank you and shout out to all of the folks in Quincy who came out last night to City Hall, to our square, as well as all of our first responders and all of the women and men in our police department. We ended up having a 3-hour vigil that started down in the center, went all the way across the city and back. The police were right there alongside with them, cleared the roads for them, and it ended peacefully. And I just think that given everything that's happening, it's a really powerful statement from our city and from our residents and from the community. So I just want to take an opportunity to thank them and really just, give them again a shout out for, the work that they did behind that. That's, I think, a testament to how we are as a city, and sort of bringing that back to your question on, what this impact is to our residents in this city. There's 3 things here. The first and foremost is our overall health and well-being. We have 27 miles of coastline here in Quincy. And, 3 years ago when we had this 100-year storm, which I think will happen more frequently and not in 100 years, everyone across the city was impacted. We had residents that were displaced and could not get to their homes, could not get to their loved ones, could not reach their loved ones because they literally didn't have access to the roads to get to their home. There are families who are still displaced from that flood and still trying to recover from that. And those are our neighbors, and I think, the reaction that we had last night is the same reaction we had then. We come together and pool all of our resources, as little as they might be. We try really hard to support those who are in immediate need, but that is something that we keep very front of mind. We need to make sure that we're taking the time to, fix all of our seawalls, to repair our tide gates, and to ensure that whatever Mother Nature brings, we are, again, putting our resources together to have prevention measures in place as much as possible. That is something that's very front of mind for a lot of us across the city, regardless of where they live. If they live right up, in front of the beach or further back inwards into the city, there are tide gate issues across the entire city that we need to be mindful of. The air quality is another thing. We're really lucky to have the Red Line and the commuter rail come through the city of Quincy. We have incredible transportation through the bus lines that we have here in the city as well. But, all of those buses that we have here in the city are some of the oldest buses that are here in the Commonwealth. And we have a bus depot here. They are looking to relocate that bus depot. But when they do that, we want to ensure that they rebuild it in such a way that it can accommodate hybrid buses. Because again, with the amount of transportation that comes through the city and the amount of buses that come through the city, again, just right now, the emissions that come from them, they are the oldest buses in the fleet, which we just can't have anymore. Another thing is the financial impact. We look at the city's budget every single year. That's one of our top priorities as councilors. And you take a look at the school's infrastructure, you take a look at, again, the infrastructure that we have for our seawalls and our tide gates. And in an effort to protect all of our wetlands, that all comes at a cost, essentially, by the residents and the homeowners here in the city. And so, as we work to create other resources of energy here in the city, residents, take a look at our city, move higher all electric vehicles. Again, that's cost savings as far as in repair to the vehicles that we have now. And so we're constantly also looking at that when we're visiting our budget every single year. And then third, and certainly not last, I would take a look and say that the overall impact of development, I think here in Quincy and overall in the state, is huge. People are looking and trying to advocate for affordable housing options, but we're also trying to look and see what is the impact that has as far as transportation, congestion, traffic, accessibility, mobility. What does that impact have across residents in the city? And so, we really work to make sure that the development that continues to happen here in the city and the growth that happens, take all of that into consideration, because every time a new building goes up, you have more residents moving in, and we need to make sure that those new residents have access to reliable transportation. So that's also a priority for us in working with the MBTA to make sure that that's a priority during development as well.
A lot to digest there, and I think this highlights a lot of what we've been seeing, that there's so much to be done at the federal, state, and local level. Congressman McGovern, kind of touching on Councilor's second point around the budget. I know the stimulus and the various stimulus plans that are coming out of Congress are a real focus of people in the states when we're thinking about the green budget, which the Environmental League has long worked on. But in light of COVID-19 and shaping conversations at the federal level around climate change and clean energy, how might the stimulus be designed to accelerate progress rather than slow it?
Well, I mean, one is we need to make sure that we're investing in green technologies, that we're investing in efforts to create jobs that will help and protect our environment. Look, we have a little bit of a problem in Washington, and that is that we have something called the United States Senate, and we have the president, and they don't share a lot of the views that many of us have. That we have a responsibility to be good stewards of this planet, that there's great opportunity in investing in green technologies and in green jobs and in clean energy, and that don't share our commitment to protecting open space in this country. And so we have tried along the way to make sure that these stimulus packages that we have put forward have a green component to them. I mean, we've run into some resistance in the Senate and with the White House, but we need to keep on trying. And look, at the end of the day, a lot of what we all are committed to depends on whether we have the votes to do it, and whether we have, a working partner, a partner in the White House who will work with us. We are not only dealing with a hostile Senate and a hostile White House. I mean, these are people who go to their way to try to find ways to invest more in energy sources that are one of the leading causes of pollution on this planet. So look, we have I mean, there are tax incentives, there are direct funds that can be provided to businesses that are actually committed to the environment. There's some flexibility in what has been passed that can be very helpful with that. But quite frankly, we need to do more. Europe is committing to a green stimulus. We're going to be left behind if we don't see the huge benefits in a green recovery. So I'm committed to working with all of you in that direction, but I need to point out the political realities in Washington right now. We're dealing with some people who do not share our values, and unfortunately, that's the case at this very crucial moment. I hope that changes very shortly.
I know we here at ELM, and especially, or speaking for myself, appreciate the leadership of the Massachusetts delegation. And I know that you actually we had to delay this because you oversaw the first ever remote vote in congressional history. And I know Rep. Golden recently voted in the first ever remote voting of the Massachusetts State House. And turning to you, Rep. Golden, how have you seen COVID impact the state legislature's ability to pass climate legislation? I know through the chat and question function, we're seeing a lot of questions about, what might the State House do to respond?
I mean, currently right now, all hands are on deck trying to deal with COVID. I could tick off a litany of legislation that we've passed to help hospitals, to help people on unemployment insurance. I mean, just recently, and this is not only my office, many reps and senators are having the same issue. We just closed out, and this is a very unfortunate quote, our 125th case of unemployment insurance, pandemic unemployment assistance, as well as small business stuff. So my entire staff, as well as myself, it's day in and day out dealing with this pandemic currently right now. That has really taken center stage. But let's not forget about the other major piece that we are responsible to come up with, and that is an overall budget. The first number came out, it was $4 billion with a B out of our approximate $43 billion budget. And now we're looking at $6 billion. And it's important to note that the $6 billion is not off the 43 billion, but actually off of 29 billion. We have some items in our budget that we simply can't touch. And that's to the tune of $13+ billion, which is non-discretionary funding. So all the air in the room right now is honestly, it's COVID, and it is how we're going to look at the discretionary side of our budget, which is 29 billion and some change. How could we possibly take a cut of 6 billion? And I know, and I'm not, believe me, I'm not pressuring the congressman. He's been there for us in the past, and that has been very, very helpful with the ARA stimulus funds. Congressman, I believe you folks brought in better than $16 billion. And you know, we thank you. In 2007, I think it was, and all the way through 2009. I'm hopeful that at some point that we'll hear that again, and the federal government will come through. And I think the congressman, as well as my Congresswoman Trahan, they have their work cut out with them, for them with dealing with the United States Senate. But we're going to continue to concentrate, I think, from a House and a Senate on COVID, on the epic fall of revenue, but the committee, TUE committee, is still working on energy pieces. And I think later on today, we'll probably get into that conversation as to where some of this legislation may go. But there's still a lot going on within the committees. And Speaker DeLeo has been extremely engaged with the Committee on TUE on top of everything else that he has going on. So it's a very stressful time, but this is, it's go time, and we need to accomplish things from a COVID side, from the budget side, and of course the environmental side, environmental/energy out of TUE.
Certainly, I'll definitely be coming back to that. Councillor Liang, I just wanted to talk a little bit with you about, you know, the fact that municipal leaders really are on the front lines of this crisis. How are you and your colleagues managing to keep climate change on your list of priorities, given the urgent response that you all have been providing to Quincy?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I love about this job, and you know, I know that Rep. Golden, again, you're on the state level, and Congressman McGovern, you're on the federal level, but still, you know, when we are able to go through our neighborhoods, go grocery shopping, I mean, we see our constituents day in and day out. I think each of us have experienced that, and that's one of the parts that I love about this job, is we're able to have, you know, real-time conversations with folks that we represent. And, you know, my colleagues, my 8 other colleagues on the council, you know, experience the same thing. We bring a lot of that to the work that we do on the council. And I mentioned earlier, most recently, you know, with the flooding that had happened here in the city, that was an opportunity for us to also work on the federal level. We were able to get some funding and some support in to help address, you know, obviously those who were displaced, and make sure that they were taken care of, and working with FEMA and working with their insurance companies to get back on their feet. But long term, that has been something that we've been working on the last 3 years, even before then, to work with our Department of Public Works to create a new natural resources department to make sure that we're funding these efforts to, again, create and put into place proactive measures so that that does not happen again to the residents here in the city. And so every day we're looking at making sure that we're hitting the goals that we set for ourselves. And again, setting up those prevention measures to make sure that our residents are protected. Above all else, the budgetary process for us is one of the most important things that we do as counselors. And, you know, in addition to that, we also have the ability to pass ordinances here in the city of Quincy. And through that, we're able to affect real change. You know, I talked a little bit about development earlier and how we can frame some of the regulations around development here on the local level. And one example of that is to, you know, write something that dictates how many parking spaces a development can have. And sometimes people think, well, there's nowhere to ever park, so we need more parking spaces. But on the flip side of that, you have to also think that if you have a large development that has more parking spaces available, it encourages naturally people to have more cars, you know? And so that's a conversation that was brought to us by way of residents, specifically folks who are in this group called Quincy Climate Action Network, QCAN. And that really changed the conversation for a lot of us to look at development in a different way. We were also able to pass a plastic bag ban. And again, that is an ordinance that we can write and that we did and we passed. And I'm really excited and happy that we were able to do that. And most recently also municipal aggregation is something that we looked at as a body that we were able to pass as well. Other efforts outside of what we can do with ordinances and what we can afford within our annual budget are efforts like the Complete Streets program. So this is something that our new department, the Traffic, Parking, Alarm, and Lighting Department, put together to look at our city holistically, look at the traffic signals, where the congestion is happening, look at public transportation accessibility, where the bus lanes are, where the bus stops are, and on top of that, where the bike lanes are, and right now we don't have as many as we'd like to see, but we're moving in that direction because of this overall Complete Streets program. And that is actually an effort where we can work with our state delegation to get some funding in place so that we can move forward with that. And we're really lucky here in the city of Quincy. We have Rep. Ron Mariano, we have Rep. Bruce Ayers and Taki Chan and Dan Hunt. We also have Senator Keenan, and every time we do an effort like the Complete Streets program, they're very close with myself and my colleagues on those kinds of efforts, and they're always, supportive of that. And so these are just three of the ways that we have been taking action as a body on the council to make sure that everything we do, whether it's development or traffic or accessibility, that it all comes back with a lens of, how can we do this to improve our environmental standing and impact here in the city.
And I'm glad to hear you bring up particularly the Natural Resources Department. I know Congressman McGovern has been a key champion for decades of the Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund, which not only helps grow and preserve our federal resources, but is also a key source of funding for our state parks. Since actually we started social distancing, EEA has said that we've seen 100% increase in the use of DCR parks during this time. So I guess my question to Congressman McGovern is, we hear that the Senate will very soon pass the Great American Outdoors Act, which will include some of the funding for water and land. Is there anything you can tell us about how the House might continue this advocacy?
Look, we are committed to permanent funding for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Look, we need conservation not only for our well-being, but for our survival. And the United States loses a football field's worth of nature every 30 seconds to development. And we're not going to have a habitable world to pass on to our kids unless we change that reality. And I've been pushing for permanent funding for LWCF since I first came to Congress. When I got elected, I remember my first year was 1997 or 1998, Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House and was trying to eliminate the program outright. And I really didn't know a lot about it. But a lot of the environmental groups that are in Massachusetts came to me and educated me on LWCF, and I became a passionate supporter of the program, and we introduced an amendment to put funding back into the appropriations bills that Gingrich had eliminated to actually support the LWCF. But Joe Cunningham from one of the Carolinas is likely to introduce the House version of the bill that will have permanent funding for LWCF this week. The Senate will vote next month on it, and my hope is that the president will sign it, once it gets to his desk. But this is an important. I always point to the LWCF as an example of how important activism is and how important active advocacy is, because quite frankly, this program almost died in 1998, and if it weren't for especially the people in Massachusetts, this program would have been eliminated. And the only thing more difficult than sustaining a program like this is starting up a new program. And so this is a victory, and I hope it'll be a permanent victory in the very near future.
We're glad to hear it. I know with our partner organization, the League of Conservation Voters, this has always been a top priority. So thank you for that. I do want to kind of bounce a little bit out of order and go back to Councillor Liang. I know you've kind of already spoken movingly about some of the things that are currently happening around Black Lives Matter and peaceful protests, and you've talked a lot about transportation issues related to air quality in Quincy and beyond. I was just hoping that you could expand a little bit on that, because certainly over the last few months, we've seen so much data on, access to care, stigma, systematic inequality, being an underlying issue for COVID-19, never mind just kind of systemic underlying racism. So I was hoping you might be able to touch a little bit on how you look at environmental justice, particularly around transportation, but just in general.
Yeah, I mean, this is an issue that's really close to home for me. You had mentioned earlier that I'm a daughter of immigrants, and when my parents first moved to Quincy, they lived in an area of the city that's a little bit more set away from the main roads. And I remember one day I was driving it to put up some house signs with my mom, and she laughed and she said, you know, I will never forget the time that your dad got off the train in Quincy Center and walked all the way here, thinking that it was a lot closer, because when he rode the bus, it was such a quick ride, but the walk ended up being so long. And so it was after that that he got a car, you know? And so, you know, we can laugh now because we sort of talk about, you know, some of the things that my dad does that makes us laugh, but, you know, it's a really important thing that I hold dear, because it really, I think, goes to show that, you know, we were a family at the time that couldn't afford to have a car, you know, and so we loved that we were able to get access to public transportation. But then you look at the bus lines that we have here in the city, we're a cut through city, you know, and a lot of folks are starting to move here and to live here, but they don't necessarily work here. And so you look and you say, well, then it makes sense that you have so many bus lines, you have access to so many train stations, that the buses would run more frequently, and they don't, you know, particularly in those areas where those who are less fortunate and don't have, again, access to be able to afford a car, they could sometimes wait an hour for the bus, you know, and then when it's not reliable, what happens then? You know, when you have a mom who needs to get on the bus at a certain time to bring their child to daycare, to then get on the train, to then get to work on time, you know, when those things break down, that directly impacts families like that. It directly impacts families like mine, where my dad couldn't catch a bus to come home, and so he decided to walk, which ended up taking much longer than waiting for the bus, which was taking an hour anyways, you know. And so this all becomes cyclical, and it's almost a question of, you know, a chicken or the egg kind of a situation. You know, is there more ridership? And if so, we can increase, you know, the frequency between, or decrease the frequency between buses to have more buses come through there. But if the ridership is not there, then why should we, you know, run more buses? And again, that's a chicken or the egg question. And I think the thing that we struggle here in the city with is, if you don't provide the reliability with the transportation that's there, then of course you're not going to have the ridership. You know, we're seeing such an increase of Uber and Lyft, and that's only further exacerbating this problem. I think, you know, this is a huge issue that we need to look at as far as reliability and accessibility. We need to expand on how frequently these buses are going to these neighborhoods like the one I grew up in. We need to expand on the frequency and make sure that people aren't waiting an hour to get on the bus to go to pick up their child from daycare to then be able to get to work. We need to increase the reliability of the Red Line. We have 4 stations here in the city. We have people that come from the South Shore to take those trains. And if we do not have that kind of reliability that we need, people are left, you know, walking an hour to get home like my dad did. And so this is something that, you know, everyone here in the city has been fighting for quite some time. We are constantly working with Senator Keenan to, again, you know, work with the MBTA and you know, relay that information and to relay these kinds of asks. I know Representative Bruce Ayers has been advocating for a ferry service for quite some time. We have, you know, just down the street from me, access to, you know, a ferry that at the time was $8 to ride both ways, you know? So we're getting there, but we're not quite there. And I think that so long as, you know, in conjunction with, again, our state and federal elected officials, that we're continuing to champion these issues, I hope that we can achieve what it is that we want to see as far as accessibility here in the city.
Great, thank you. That's really well said. And I know we were talking a lot about job development is really important to the constituents in Lowell, Rep. Golden. How do you see the fact that we have about 3% of our workforce employed in clean energy? And obviously we're going to, you know, we're still woefully behind in energy efficiency and clean energy deployment relative to our 2050 goals. How do you see, or where do you see kind of the biggest job opportunities within clean energy opportunities? And after this, we will switch to Q&A from the general audience. So feel free to get those questions in.
Okay. Well, the committee, I'm very happy to say, the research that we've put together created, and I'll say this very boldly, we created the offshore wind industry, which has really pushed our neighboring states, and some have bypassed us in certain instances. And I know that the congressman probably has a lot to say as to what's happening with BOEM and you know, because our congressional delegation has been extremely helpful. But when we talk about creating jobs and we talk about what we've done so far with the administration, with the Senate as well, I mean, looking at the SMOT program, doubling solar, and like I'd said, creating that offshore industry, really pushing battery storage, working with our friends over in UMass Lowell and the like, passing things like GreenWorks, which was 1.3 billion, which we could have a whole segment on what GreenWorks will be doing to put money into our economy and grow our green jobs when it becomes with competitive grants and green initiatives as a whole. But I think one of the biggest things that I'd like to point to is that the proposed generation currently right now throughout all of ISO, which people need to take into effect everything that's going on throughout New England, 90+% of it is green or cleaner energy when it comes to wind, when it comes to solar, battery storage. And I'd like to say that from my perspective, the way we look at this, that's what we've been advocating to do. We're changing the mix, exactly what Speaker DeLeo had charged the committee with, and changing our grid as a whole, where I think our future is extremely bright, where offshore wind is going to be a big boom. And I know that some aren't interested in the hydro, the firming of hydro that's coming from Quebec, and I get that, but that's another piece that we have coming down. The energy efficiency, you had just referenced, Casey, a moment ago. There's always, how much are we doing? We like to brag that we're either number one or number two, going back and forth for California. But as far as energy efficiency pieces, I do hear a lot of different ideas with the emails and the calls, speaking with practically every group that's walking through the door. And I think Elm and 350 and last week I just met with the folks from Our Climate that had some ideas as well. So 3% isn't acceptable. We have lost thousands of jobs in the past few weeks. We need to take this opportunity and double down on it. I once again, Congressman, I know you're going to be there with us. You've been with us in the past on ARA funding, but we've already been talking about, if and when ARA funding comes, how can we look at this? How can we participate to help our green economy? And I think that's what, I know I spoke to all of my House members just yesterday on the committee, and that's what we were discussing about how to give a boost, give a shot in the arm to the green economy. Because once again, I think it's between March and April, I want to say it's 16,000 jobs that have been lost in the green economy. And that is just devastating to not only communities, but to families who are counting on that. So we're excited for a lot of things. We're excited to come out of post-COVID, I think, because I think committee of TUE is ready to roll.
All right, and we've actually broken our series record for the number of questions submitted from the audience. So we're going to try to consolidate and package as many as we can. I do know a lot of them are actually talking about a number of the bills that are before TUE. I know you have a big deadline for tomorrow for several of these bills. Could you maybe touch a little bit on how TUE is making bills like the Decker-Garbelia 100% renewable bill, or the H2810, the carbon pricing bill? Folks really want to know how TUE is working on these and making it a priority to release them. Abram.
Yes, I would never speak for the entire committee as a whole. So I want to be very, very clear. This discussion has been happening over the past few days, and just until I'm sorry?
I was going to say this was going to be a new way for you to dodge my question, but you're back. You're back.
Oh, I'm sorry. But I mean, so let me start again. I don't want to speak for my committee members that we've all been talking over the past few days, and everybody on TUE, the House and the Senate side. But I think that COVID-19 has really put a little bit of paralysis on not just this committee, on every committee out there, dealing with COVID-19, dealing with constituents, dealing with businesses, and of course, dealing with the looming budget. But I do believe that we will want to be, we'll be looking at this stuff in the future. All right, I'm just going to say it. I think we should extend it, but that does not mean it's going to happen. I want to be crystal clear on that. People committee members, as well as every rep and senator, has been focused on constituent services, taking care of constituents. And this time frame between March, April, and May, which is really devoted to a lot of this heavy lifting, getting in to these issues, has been devoted towards constituents. So, you know, my hope is that the committee will continue to look at these issues.
I appreciate your honesty. I know this has certainly been a trying time, not just for members, but also people in their district. And I appreciate the work that is being done at the State House to address that. Congressman McGovern, a lot of the questions we have also been getting kind of address some of the concerns you've already raised about the Trump administration, particularly has been widely reported. They have systematically rolled back hundreds of environmental protections over the past 3 years. Just a few weeks ago during this same series, we spoke with A.G. Healy about her role in defending against these rollbacks. And a viewer has asked, what is Congress doing for its oversight, or in its oversight role of the EPA and their kind of anti-environmental actions?
Well, you had alluded a while ago to the fact that we have kind of changed our rules in Congress now. We're now able to operate similarly to the Massachusetts state legislature, and be able to do hearings and actually markups and votes on the House floor remotely. So if people can't get there due to the COVID-19 crisis, we're not paralyzed. And for several weeks, I mean, Congress has not been holding hearings. If you can't do hearings, you can't do your oversight. That is now changing. So we're going to get back into doing hearings and scrutinizing the EPA and other departments and agencies that we think are being hostile to the environment. So that's number one. Two, I mean, we're going to utilize the courts as well to challenge the administration every chance we can get. We think some of the things that they're doing are illegal, and so we're going to need to utilize the courts. Look, what we're going to end up having to do is play defense from now until the end of the year. My hope is that things are going to change. My hope is that people have had enough of this and are going to, make their views clear in the November election. I mean, if we have a Senate that we can work with, if we have a president who cares about the environment and is committed to a clean energy agenda, I mean, there are lots of things we can do. I mean, the sky is the limit. The reason why this election is so important is because we're running out of time. And that really, is the harsh reality. We can't be talking about these things 10 years from now. They should have happened 10 years ago. And so we need to, we're facing an urgent deadline here. And in terms of a future stimulus package, I mean, again, to the extent that it reflects, a green agenda is going to depend on whether we can get it through the Senate and whether we can get a president to sign it. And I'm hoping that that will be the case. So, we are fighting as hard as we can against this administration's rollback of environmental protections, its embrace of the dirtiest forms of energy that exist. We are fighting back on this president's withdrawal from the Paris Accord and other international agreements and organizations designed to deal with the issue of the climate crisis. But it's this is a serious moment. And I just say one other thing. The president has been very successful in some quarters as painting those of us who care about the environment as somehow being punitive to the economy, of somehow being anti-job or trying to, add additional costs to consumers. Nothing could be farther from the truth. What we're advocating here is a way out of this economic crisis post-COVID-19. We're trying to provide a roadmap, where countless new jobs can be created in the area of protecting our environment and clean energy. We are trying to pave a way that we can deal with issues of environmental injustice that have, quite frankly, been deadly to many of our low-income populations and communities of color. People keep on saying to me all the time, when I see them in supermarkets and, when we do events like this, I can't wait to get back to normal. I can't wait to get back to normal. Well, I don't want to go back to normal. because normal wasn't acceptable. The same old, allowed for 40 million of our fellow citizens to be hungry or food insecure. It allowed for the dirtiest forms of energy to continue to proliferate. It allowed for this administration to continue to roll back environmental protections. We need to chart a very new course. We need to think boldly, and we need to, be clear that we don't want to go back to normal. We want to be much better than that. We want a new normal that actually respects the environment and respects the health and well-being of our citizens.
That's great. I really appreciate the forcefulness that especially our delegation and you as chairman have been acting in Congress. Councillor Liang, I was happy to hear you talk a little bit about resiliency and the impact of these more and more proliferation, quite frankly, of 100-year storms. And obviously, so were many of our viewers. They were hoping you could describe some of the overall strategy that you and your colleagues might be developing around climate resiliency for Quincy and ways you may need to address that moving forward. I know we've seen the state's MVP program working directly with municipalities like Quincy to increase their preparedness. So I just wanted to see if you could touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, so I talked a lot about a lot of the work that we're doing, with the ordinances that we're passing, my colleagues and I that we've been working on. And I talked a little bit about some of the work and support that we've gotten from the federal and state delegation. And I also just want to take this time to talk about the work that we've been able to do around that because of the residents here in the city that have stepped up and gotten involved. And so I mentioned earlier, there's this group called Quincy Climate Action Network, also known as QCAN. I think Ross Edwards, one of the members, is listening, so I'm excited to see him here. But this is an incredible group. They actually got together and worked with the city to get a full-time energy consultant, which ultimately saved us millions of dollars over the last few years. And they were also part of the effort that we eventually budgeted for to put solar panels across all of our public schools here in the city. We had a few new schools that we were able to build, again, thanks to the support from the state to be able to do that. And on those new schools, we have solar panels across all of them. We are working again with the different departments to visit what we're going to do to change over the fleet of vehicles to have an electric fleet here in this city. We, again, I talked about this earlier, have passed municipal aggregation to increase the amount of renewable energy that we are using here in this city. We, again, passed the plastic bag ban recently across all of the supermarkets and our small business owners. We've been working with them to implement that. And we're also visiting, how we're going to not only pay for, but implement composting across the city as well. So all of these efforts and many more that I'm probably missing, again, we were able to do thanks to the funding and support of the state and the federal level. But the initiatives really came about because of the folks who were involved with this organization. And that's just one of many. We have an organization called Quincycles who've been advocating for the increase of bike lanes that we have here across the city and protected lanes that we have, not just for pedestrian access, but also for bicycle access. And these are individual things that we can point to, but the overall impact that it has and the long-term impact that has on our environment and the emissions that we're giving off here in the city. We're, the 8th largest city in the Commonwealth, and after the census, and everyone please fill out the census, hopefully we'll be the 6th largest city in the Commonwealth. I mean, just with the increase in numbers that we have here in the city of residents and development and small businesses, the greenhouse gas emissions that we have here are naturally just going to increase, and to be able to implement, these one-off initiatives that are so important, even in its own right. I mean, it just creates an overall movement for us to be moving in the right direction. And that's all possible because of these residents banding together to do this work with us. We certainly don't ever claim to be energy experts, but we don't claim to be experts on any one specific issue. We can't be experts on all issues. It's important that people who are tuning in reach out to, their local, state, and federal elected officials to work with them on these kinds of initiatives. Again, when it came to the parking requirements for developments, that issue was brought to us and we were made more aware and educated on that issue because a resident is really well versed in that issue. We talked about municipal aggregation because Larry Cretion came to us and said, hey, let me talk to you guys and inform you guys about the importance of municipal aggregation. I saw in the comments in one of the Q&As, somebody had asked about the Weymouth compressor station. That impacts us and a lot of our residents here in Quincy as well. And the effort and the education that goes around that is a huge effort done by the residents here in this city. And so, you know, I'm really proud of the work that we're doing. Like Congressman McGovern said, you know, it certainly isn't the new normal, and it shouldn't be somewhere that we stop to say, okay, let's just go back to that, we're done. You know, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but I implore everyone who's listening, I see over 200 attendees here, I don't even know how many more are listening on Facebook, to really lend your expertise and your passion to elected leaders like us, because we need your help, we need your support, and we need your guidance, you know, to make sure that we are continuing down this path. It can't fall by the wayside. And I think that, you know, opportunities like this and working with ELM are ways that we can continue that work. I'm really proud of the steps that we have taken. That storm is one that is still really, you know, fresh in all of our minds. And again, the impact that it had on families, you know, is still really prevalent. And the one response that we had to that is one of many that we've taken since then. And you know, we can't stop here. So I'm hoping that, again, people who are tuning in and the residents that have been involved continue to do so. It really is a huge help to our work.
Well, as an advocacy organization, I appreciate your interest in working with partners and really the work that you're doing at the local level. Just to kind of wrap it up as a closing question, we've had a lot of comments come in about an interest in a green and just economic recovery, and kind of what opportunities at the three various levels of government do you see as a way to build a more resilient and equitable environment for the people you represent? And we'll start local and head towards the federal level. So Councillor President Liang, also thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
No, thank you. So it's a great segue from what I just spoke about. And I think the next question, I think naturally from that is, well, okay, how, you know, and you know, for every single one of us that are on the call, you know, Rep. Golden and Rep. McGovern, you know, our emails, our phone numbers, they're all listed on the government websites, the city's website. I encourage people to reach out. Our number is attached directly to our cell phone, so I encourage people to reach out as well. One of the things that I do want to advocate for, and that I've been able to work collectively with some members of the planning department here in the city, as well as some other nonprofit organizations, is how do you get involved when you have language barriers and when you you know, can't read a sheet about a community meeting in English because, you know, English is your second language, or you might not speak that language. And so that's an effort that I'm also working on. And I'd love to have, again, those who are listening and tuning in, you know, work with us to implement this, is to translate these kinds of materials that we are sending out to people. We have a tree planting program that we started, and all the flyers that went out for the tree planting program went out in English and in Chinese. Quincy has the highest percentage of an Asian population with respect to the overall number and the population size. And to see those kinds of materials go out, you know, and being translated is really important, because these are great initiatives that we've been working on, and they're really important causes. But if you're sending out the information and you're trying to bring people in to this work and to this, you know, to these important efforts, if they can't read what you're sending to them and they can't understand it and they can't communicate with you, that right there is a huge initial barrier to bringing more people into the conversation. So I would, you know, just put a note out there and put an ask out there that, you know, whatever communities you're working with, you know, if you're sharing important resources and information, to be really mindful and respectful about the language of that community that you're speaking to, because again, this is a really important issue that we all are impacted by, regardless of what language you speak. And so if we are doing, you know, efforts and providing resources to address it, it needs to be in a language that people can understand. So that's something that I'm really passionate about. And, you know, I would implore everyone who's working on these issues to keep very front of mind.
That's always a great reminder. Rep. Golden?
I'd like to say that there's no question that the state will be participating in some type of green recovery once again with any type of ARA funds, like I mentioned earlier. But I think we need to continue to build on the success that we've had. I mean, we have success with environment, with electric vehicles, with the rebate programs. Mass CEC is wonderful and needs assistance from us, but we've Mass Save, Greentown Labs, all the stuff I've mentioned about earlier about energy efficiency, the Green Works piece, the number of bills that we've put out of committee, and the number of bills that will be still worked on within committee. But you know, battery, solar storage. I don't think it's a mistake, once again, that the proposed generation that is throughout New England is really some of the difficult labor that we here have done when you're talking about wind and solar and battery storage, and 94%. I think I can't hammer this home enough that the proposed generation, once BOEM makes their decision at the end of the year, I think, Congressman, I think they're supposed to make this by December 2020, that this is going to open up the floodgates, which is going to open up jobs. But what we need to concentrate on, all those great pieces that we've done in the past, what we need to concentrate on is a green recovery to assist those tens of thousands. Like I said, I think it was 13 to 14,000 jobs that have been lost. All the good things we've done, we need to kind of double down on for our immediate future, so the green recovery does happen. And it's been a real privilege to be with the Congressman, and Madam President, thank you very much for your time as well. And Casey, as always, ELM is leading the way in with these discussions, and I just want to say thank you very much for your time as well. And of course, to all the participants who are out there listening in.
I appreciate that. How about Congressman McGovern? Thank you for your time as well.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'm delighted to be here with Tom and Nita. Thank you. They're great leaders, and I'm inspired by them, and I wish we had more people like them all throughout the country. Look, there's, on the federal level, I mean, the most important thing is we need to make sure that there are like-minded people who are holding positions of power, because otherwise we can talk ourselves to death. And then if we don't have the votes, we can't move some of these things that, quite frankly, we need to move very urgently. We're told that we're running out of time to deal with the global climate crisis. And I believe it. I mean, I actually believe in science. My colleagues here believe in science. So there's an urgency to this moment. We need to be committed to decarbonizing the grid. We need to be investing more in conservation. We need to understand that if we're going to deal with the issue of the climate crisis, that it also means, sustainable agriculture. It means a good transportation plan. It means committing ourselves to good, clean, renewable energy. We need to, in the meantime, stop this proliferation of pipelines all over the country, because once you start building these pipelines, we're committed to that energy, and it's not the energy we want for the foreseeable future. So, I mean, we need to be, this is the point where we need to think out of the box. We need to be bold. I mean, I support the Green New Deal, as a roadmap of how we should proceed. It covers a lot of different things. It's a holistic approach to how we should move forward. But I'll just close with this. I think Hillary Clinton says it takes a plan. Well, Hillary Clinton says it takes a village. Jim McGovern says it takes a plan. We need to have a plan in place if this our money becomes available, that we can hit the ground running, that we have a holistic, comprehensive plan in place to move us to a greener, cleaner future. So, look, I think the sky's the limit. I think anything is possible here, and I am hopeful. But we need to make sure that we are getting like-minded people in positions of power and positions of authority, so we can move this agenda forward.
Well, thank you for that. And I'm kind of glad to end on a hopeful note. I really appreciate the time, Congressman McGovern, Representative Golden, and Councillor Liang. This has been a really thoughtful and thought-provoking conversation. I want to extend our thanks to Biogen, whose generous support makes this series possible. Keep an eye out on an email from the ELM team with links for the recording of this session that we encourage you to share, as well as registration information for next week's webinar on corporate sustainability in the era of COVID-19. I hope everyone stays well, and thank you again for joining us. Have a good rest of the afternoon.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.